So I would like to invite the second speaker, Dr. Swati Bhayana, who is the Associate Consultant in Pediatric Hematology and Oncology and BMT Unit, Fortis Memorial Research Institute, Gurgaon. She has an MBBS and MD in Pediatrics, FNB, Pediatric Hematology, Oncology, and BMT, Sir Gangaram Hospital. She has got more than 25 publications and book chapters into her credit. She is the member of IAP, ISNO, Indian Society of Neuro-Oncology, ISMPO, Indian Society of Pediatric and Medical Oncology, and ISBMT. Her interests are leukemias and neuro-oncology. So I would like to welcome Dr. Swati Bhayana for on talk therapeutic strategies road from out with the old in with the new. So I welcome Dr. Swati Bhayana for the talk. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harsh, for the warm welcome. And thank you so much, Kaho, for this invite. I take immense pleasure in getting invited today. This eve is very special to us because International World Thalassemia Day is celebrated on 8th May. And I take immense pride in discussing these therapeutic strategies of thalassemia. Dr. Swati Bhayana. I'm a consultant in pediatric hemonc and have about 6 years of experience in the field. So, talking about the therapeutic strategy, we must first know what is the problem that we are dealing with. So, the problem statement of thalassemia in the world is immense. And in India, about 10,000 new births happen every year. About 67% of these people reside in the rural region, and only 15 to 20 centers are offering the prenatal diagnosis. So we do have a very optimistic future, but the dream is really far-fetched. The projected annual cost of care is going up, and there are only about 250 bone marrow or hematopoietic stem cell transplants in thalassemics happening annually. My most of the talk and my most of the topic or knowledge about the subject comes from thanks to the Thalassemia International Federation guidelines, which are published every year, which give us point-to-point care and point-to-point guidance regarding managing these patients. So when we talk about thalassemia, we've been repeatedly knowing and discussing that in thalassemia, the blood is not formed. Because the blood is not formed, the answer is blood. But it is like a Kuan Khai story always going on. Because if we give blood transfusions, there is always a problem of iron overload and end organ damage, which comes with these blood transfusions. Having said that, transfusion therapy comes along with chelation therapy, and we have to manage them end to end. These are the old aspects and ongoing aspects of thalassemia. But when we look upon the future, we talk about luspatercepts, stem cell transplants, and gene therapies. I want to outline my talk under few scenarios. First, a non-transfusion support, then transfusion and chelation support. What are new drugs on the radar? Transplant in thalassemics and gene therapy in thalassemics. When we talk about non-transfusion support, obviously thalassemics are always advised to keep a very healthy lifestyle. They are advised to restrain from habits such as smoking, alcoholism, because they already have an ongoing micro level end organ damage. Having said that, it is easier to give a broad term of a healthy lifestyle, but we always inculcate daily folic acid supplementation, vitamin D supplementation, zinc supplementation in those who are low in their zinc levels or those who are on DFP chelation. A healthy lifestyle and a healthy diet, fruits, veggies, they usually encompass the vitamin C and E aspect, and we usually don't need to supplement them. I'm a pediatric hematologist, so giving too many supplements to the kids become a difficulty at times. So we rely on multivitamins, which are without iron. Having said that, we should always have their vaccination schedule at par on point. We should always inculcate annual flu vaccine and hepatitis B vaccine, those who are seronegative for hepatitis B virus markers. If you are planning a splenectomy, a pre-splenectomy vaccination schedule, including pneumo, meningococcal, hemophilus, inactivated polio, the influenza, they should all be complete. So when we talk about thalassemia, the second point which comes, and the most important point which comes, is transfusion. Transfusion and chelation, as I have been repeatedly saying, they come hand in hand, they walk together like husband wife. But when we deal with a thalassemia kid, they can either present less than 2 years or present later in life up to 2 years, 6 years, like an intermediate picture. So the first question with the clinician asks themselves and the family needs the answer to is when to transfuse. So for thalassemics, those who have a confirmed diagnosis of thalassemia or a laboratory criteria with a hemoglobin less than 7 on 2 occasions, more than 2 weeks apart, in an asymptomatic kid, or let's say this 7 criteria is not fulfilled and they have certain things in which we know that the body knows that I have thalassemia and the body manifests it. So these are the signs such as significant signs like lethargy, not wanting to work, at the nadir of anemia, having difficulty mentation, poor growth, failure to thrive, having intramedullary or extramedullary hematopoiesis, so that indicates and warrants transfusion. But transfusion is not a decision to be ticked at once. It requires commitment from both the sides. And we definitely are a commitment phobic generation. But having said that, commitment is required from the patient, from the family, about the time, commitment about checkups, about monthly follow ups, about chelation, compliance to chelation, the costs which comes in hand despite the government services providing free blood to them, and commitment required from the clinician side as well about providing safe blood, regular monitoring, and monitoring them for long and short term complications. So the TIF guidelines say that we have to maintain a pre-transfusion hemoglobin level of 9.5 to 10.5. That means the day you are taking the blood, before taking the blood, you should have this level to make the body at least forget that the body has thalassemia. And to aim that, we have to give transfusions every 2 to 6 or 2 to 5 weekly. Before the first transfusion, when we are planning this, we order what is known as extended blood group phenotype, in which we do the gross abiotyping and minor blood group phenotype as well, and always aim to give thalassemics the major and minor blood group matched blood. This reduces the alloimmunization and reduces the burden, which additionally can complicate their lives. When we talk about transfusions, we should always maintain a pre-transfusion hemoglobins, transfuse them 2 to 5 weekly with leukodepleted blood and fresh blood. The definition TIF phase is less than 14-day-old blood. We should maintain a higher hemoglobin for heart disease and pulmonary hypertension. In all this, there is always a role of hemovigilance where we talk about vein to vein traceability, monitoring, reporting, recording anything and everything that goes wrong. Transfusion comes in hand with the chelation therapy. The more common chelations used are oral chelators, which include Deferasirox, Deferasirox FCTs, and Deferiprone, or a mix and match combinations of them. The other drug is desferrioxamine, which is an intravenous or a subcutaneous drug. And this is usually comes in handy when we have failed the oral chelation, because definitely injections do affect quality of life somewhere, or are used as a salvage or as a when we have failed 2 lines. So we have a different dosage guidelines for each of these drugs. We have different routes and we have different problems that they can create, such as Deferasirox have gastrointestinal disturbances, an asymptomatic rise in the serum ferritin levels. Deferiprone is notorious for its agranulocytosis, neutropenia, and desferrioxamine with its injection comes with the havoc of injection-related side effects. So in thalassemics, when we talk about transfusion chelation, we have to monitor them for short-term and long-term side effects. We monthly monitor them for hemoglobin, liver, renal function, depending on the chelation we're using. A 3 monthly monitoring of their growth, spleen size, serum ferritin, yearly monitoring of their T2 star MRIs, looking upon their liver, heart, endocrine workup, hormonal status, Tanner staging, DEXA scans, and eye and hearing checkups based on the chelator that we are using. When we talk about transfusion and chelation, it is a very effective treatment modality. when it is efficiently delivered. So that is a very big statement to place, but that is how the role of transfusion is. We have to get reliable blood, we have to get reliable source, reliable patient, and reliable chelation with reliable monitoring. So that is like a whole package plan which gives the efficient outcome from this therapy. Before we go any further on what are the other or what are the newer drugs and what is happening around us nowadays, one thing which is very sad to realize today is that only 12% of the children with thalassemia major globally receive adequate transfusion therapy, and less than 40% of those transfused receive adequate iron chelation. So we might talk about newer drugs, we might talk about bone marrow transplants, gene therapies, but the baseline logistics of the country needs to be enriched, needs to be sorted, needs to build on these facts that the goal is not 12%, the goal is far-fetched. So the basic of thalassemia is always to be highlighted on this day is good blood, and good and reliable blood. What are the new drugs on the radar that we know of? There are certain drugs which have already always been there, like hydroxyurea and thalidomide, which were being used increasingly in thalassemia intermedia and now are taking picture in thalassemia major as well. The other drugs include JAK2 inhibitors like ruxolitinib, erythroid maturation agents like luspatercept and sotatercept, PK activators like mitapivat, HbF inducers like tovinontrine or microhepsitins. Hydroxyurea has always been there, has been used in different formulations, different dosages. But one thing about HbF, though it has a role in delaying transfusions in thalassemia intermedia, the results in thalassemia major are inconsistent, and we don't actually have very clear answers. The answers are in gray zones about what is the approved age where I can use hydroxyurea or thalidomide. What is the safety? There is always a risk of thrombosis. And how long should I give the drug knowing that it is working? How long should I give the drug or stop the drug knowing that it is not working? Those answers are in gray zone. The newer thing is luspatercept, which is fancy and which is attracting a lot of clinicians around. So it is a recombinant fusion protein. It restores nuclear levels of transcription factors and reduces alpha globin chain aggregation. It has been upcoming because of the BELIEVE trial, in which about 33% reduction was seen in a majority of the patients, 33% reduction in the transfusion rate. And that is why it has been able to space out the transfusions, reducing the burden on the patient, reducing the havoc of iron overload. It is given like a subcut injection, so the problem of the vein is always sorted. But there are also associated side effects such as bony pains, arthralgias, which are associated with luspatercept. There are few subgroups which have been prioritized, like those who receive moderate transfusion or those unable to sustain transfusion. So both spectrums, those who have splenectomized or those who have progressive iron overload. There are other drugs like ruxolitinib and other subcutaneous agents which are being increasingly studied. A very promising thing is happening is the stem cell transplant in thalassemia. So allogenic hematopoietic peripheral stem cell transplant is a definitive curative therapy. Matched sibling donor transplant has been increasingly done, including the center that I work. We do about 30 to 40 thalassemia transplants every year. But having said that, only 30% of the young children have a matched sibling donor. So we are trying to expand the pools by including match unrelated donors, haploidentical donors, making the conditioning regimen less sick, improving the outcomes, improving the immunosuppressive and the myelosuppressive therapy we use, better risk stratifying them based on the Pissarro staging, and better dose adjustments of the busulfan and other notorious drugs. So the EBMT 2010 updated data shows a very nice outcomes with matched sibling donor transplants and the success rate reaching up to 90%, which are very promising, having the havoc that we have to face in transfusing a thalassemia kid throughout life. When we look at the health-related QOL, it is generally good in children surviving bone marrow transplants or stem cell transplants. Chronic GVHD is the most significant factor lowering them, but it happens in less than 15%. And 20 years later, the long-term side effects on fertility and everything are also very less. So the TIF guidelines recommend that HCT should be offered to TDT patients and their parents at an early age before complications happen if a HLA identical donor is available. If a MUD donor is available, then a high compatibility criteria of HLA-1 class 2 locus should be seen. Haploidentical is plus minus, but in TDT, it is a very cost-effective option. Another upcoming thing which is taking turns is gene therapy. Patient aged 14 years and older who do not have a HLA identical family, gene therapy is the answer. We have Beticel and Exacel, but these are approved in USAs and increasingly happening in the developing world as well. There are other gene therapy and gene editing trials which are happening. Again, a lot of promising things. And how does the future look like? I feel that the future is definitely looking brighter, especially in the blood domain, where we have pathogen inactivation systems. We have manufactured red blood cells coming up. We have universal red blood cells criteria, which are under trials, not approved, but definitely coming up. We have better donor pools for transplants. We have better outcomes in MUD and haploidentical. And we are having more access with the help of better NGOs, with the help of Coal India, who are supporting man sibling donors, covering their major chunks of the money. And definitely, gene therapy is the talk of the town. So, a very happy Thalassemia Day and salute to all the thalassemia warriors, that those who are around, and all the thalassemia families. And thank you so much again for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Swati Bhayana, for the very elaborative talk about the clinical management and other stuffs, especially in thalassemia. Thank you very much once again. I will request you to stay back. At the end of the session, we will be having question and answers. So we'll be requesting you to stay.